It does. All right, meeting of Teaching and Learning, Tuesday, December 13th, 2016.
All right.
All present, 6:34
6:34
start time. Okay. First item on the agenda is the overnight field trip request. So here's just a summary. I think Judy sent you all of the information, so we'll kind of go through. There's quite a few. First two are out of Tinley Park High School. Operation Snowball, there's a leadership workshop in January over the weekend, so it would be no loss of days for the students. Any questions on that one? Okay. Second one, baseball team is doing a tournament down in Alabama. This is actually over spring break, so there would be no loss of days for those students. $500 per student, offset the cost with fundraising for that one. Questions there? Kind of all pretty straightforward this time. And then the next three are out of Oak Forest High School. Baseball team doing a little tournament at O'Fallon High School. This is actually just one overnight. There was a little typo on the informational sheet that Judy had sent out. Originally it had $700 per student. That's wrong. It's only $25 per student, $700 for the whole overnight.
Okay.
So I did get clarification on that today. The second one, baseball team, same tournament that Tinley Park is requesting to go to down in Alabama over spring break. So no loss of days there.
Now they're raising $2,000 and the other one's charging $500 a kid. Okay.
You know, depends upon the boosters and how,
I guess. Yeah.
you know, how much they can fundraise.
Seems
And
like a lot.
yeah.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and no, and speaking of fundraisers again, I keep hearing from parents that they're not given the option to do the buyout. It's never even mentioned that it is an option. They're given, you have to sell this, you have to do this.
As opposed to just let me give you the X number of dollars and not worry about that. Okay. And I don't know if that's something that the company, like if you're required in order to go with a company, you have to sell X amount of product. So maybe it's not an option for them to buy it. I don't know.
Well, I know like NHS over Tinley just did poinsettias, and it was either buy them or pay $20 to buy your way out.
Yeah, maybe they do, but like the sports teams,
But are they? Is it for a trip? I mean, or just fundraising in general for the booster?
just in general.
Just in general.
Like when they sell those cards or the whatever.
Yeah, if they don't
you
want to
know.
sell, they.
Yeah, just tell me how much you need. Yeah. But a lot of parents are saying the coach never even says that that's an option.
Okay.
You know, they wind up with, 20
yeah,
pies or.
Or people don't participate and they're not given to the group either. I hear those complaints too.
Yeah.
Like, so everyone does fundraising events, some just don't, and
Yeah.
they don't pay anything.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll bring that up with the APs for teaching and learning, the ADs, and see, are they aware, is that an option for them, or are the companies they're choosing that's not an option? Maybe they should look for something else.
Well, even if it's not, if they say that, company doesn't allow a buyout or something, at least there's an explanation.
Yeah, at least the
Sure.
parents know.
Sure, absolutely. The third request is the softball team looking to do a little tournament before, the end of the season, and that would be, they would leave halfway through on a Friday, so it's a Friday night, Saturday.
When is the prom?
Sunday. That is a great question. I don't know.
April, right?
Depends on the school.
Depends on the school. It's posted. Let me know if you see it before me.
Yeah.
Well, that's just the school. That's not going to be helpful. That's just the general school calendar.
You have to
I don't
probably
know
look
if
at
I
each
have it for
school.
next year yet.
Yeah, they
I
might.
think I just saw it for one of them.
But they should, because they have to reserve
Yeah.
the location.
You don't think it would be on the school
I don't think
kit?
it's on the district website. I
Yeah.
think it's on each school's
It's on
calendar.
school.
Yeah.
She's had it before.
Oh, let's see here. Wait. Building college affairs. Yeah, that's the same link here. I'll find out from Jane and let you know.
Just to make sure.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a calendar up there at the top. Is that
That's the.
It's the daily or the monthly.
what's going
Yeah,
on?
but if you go all the way
Well,
to
let's
like
see.
April, would it be on there?
Maybe.
Or May? Nothing.
Prom.
Prom,
Oh,
28th of April.
28th.
Okay.
So here we go.
Good.
Any concerns on that one? Okay. Bring those forward to the board next week. Two other, I forgot to put this on the agenda, but here's actually proposed calendar for next school year. Looking to start about the same time, the third Thursday of August, like we did this year. Freshmen would start on the 21st. We would go right up until December 22nd for first semester. We will continue doing parent-teacher conference in October. We've got positive feedback from families that that was a really good time to do that. So there's some conversation and impact before the end of the
Right.
quarter. We're going to continue that. We'll see how February goes with the conferences kind of being backed up to Veterans Day. We also moved the Winter Institute from January to back it up to parent-teacher conferences. Instead of coming right back from winter break, having a couple of short weeks, and then going into parent-teacher conferences, having more solid weeks in January. So I think that'll work out well for everyone. The only kind of interesting situation this next school year is where Easter falls. So if you look at March, spring break will again be the last week of March, which ties right into Easter, which is
Is it April 1st?
April 1st, exactly. So normally we would have the following Monday off, but if we were to do that, if you go into May, that would push the last day of final exams after Memorial Day.
Don't want to do that.
Yeah, would not be good for kids, would not be good for teachers. So we're going to swap out. We'll come back to school the day after Easter so that we can finish before Memorial Day and have a clean break. Obviously, this is all pending the use of emergency days. That would be a moot point if we used any.
So the
And that's
final
pretty-
day is actually going to be, the final day of finals would actually be the 25th?
Correct. So they would start on the 23rd. I just noticed an asterisk missing on the 23rd. So we would start there. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward calendar. Testing, the state actually did release the 2018 SAT date. So in April, this year it's on a Wednesday. Next year, for some reason, it's on a Tuesday. I don't know why, but it's Tuesday, April 10th. So the SIP day is going to get moved to a Tuesday.
This year or next year?
Next year.
When is it this year?
This year it's April 5th. Okay. Move that forward next week. Last thing I wanted to share with you is kind of hot off the presses. In the mid-month memo last week, gave an update on kind of where we are with Common Core, our reading target, Common Core standards 1, 7, and 8, and our PSAT results came out last week for all 3 of our tests, and the item analysis was just released yesterday. So I've compiled some data for you that I wanted to share, which will help kind of bridge these two things together for you. So the first thing I want to talk about is the type 2 data. So that will be page 2 of your handout. And just to kind of refresh your memory as far as the process with the type 2, so we have a series of tests, pre, mid, and post tests in all of our freshman classes, some of our sophomores, and some of our junior classes. And we're specifically testing reading standards 1, 7, and 8. So standard 1 is all about citing textual evidence, identifying main idea. Standard 7 is all about multimedia, is students being able to read charts and graphs and data tables, pulling information out of that. And Standard 8 is all about understanding author's argument and evidence to support that argument. The way our tests are set up is Standards 1 and 7 have 10 questions, and Standard 8 has 4 questions. And I have for you our test results. This is comparing the pre, which is given within the first 2 weeks of school, to the midpoint assessment, which is given around the end of the first quarter. And you can see our averages on both of those tests is about the same from last year to this year. And our growth is about 2 questions more than where they were on the pre-test. Some things to keep in mind as we're looking at this data. It is still relatively new test data. We also want to be cautious as we're looking at this year's midpoint data, because the timing of the midpoint assessment was the same week as we gave our PSAT test. So there was a little bit of test fatigue, test frustration around that. So we may not be seeing true growth out of the midpoint assessment, but at least it's a gauge at a certain point in time. Our ultimate goal is we want to see the major growth happening on the post-test compared to the pre. But this is at least giving us a checkpoint. Are we on track to hit our growth target? Right now we are, because we're looking for 5% growth, which is 1 more question correct. The next data table that I have is specifically breaking down Standards 1, 7, and 8 on the pre and the midpoint assessment. And you'll see that the students are scoring about the same. There's really nothing statistically different about the assessments, about the scores, which is telling us, at least at this point, our tests are reliable because we're getting the same results. We can't necessarily say that the tests are valid at this point, because we know we have some issues with some of the tests. Like, for example, the math assessments are testing more math content knowledge as opposed to actually being a reading test. We also know some of the departments developed a midpoint assessment that was a little bit harder than the pre-test. Not on purpose, they just didn't realize that the reading complexity was just slightly higher than the pre. And we're really trying to help teachers understand, keep the complexity the same, because now you're able to show growth. It's not about making the test harder, it's about students being able to master the material that you're giving them. So there's just some things that we're keeping in mind as we're preparing to revise our Type 2 assessments. These are things that we're having conversations about. And then here, what I did is I pulled out, rather than looking at all, I think we have 30 different Type 2s, rather than pulling them all out, I just pulled out the data from our Introduction to English and Extended English classes. This is our 9th grade course. And the reason I did this is all students have to take English. And this curriculum was redesigned 2 years ago to specifically focus on Common Core reading, as well as writing and speaking. But their curriculum is designed to hit Standards 1, 7, and 8 within the first semester. I can't necessarily say that about all the other courses. They do touch upon and they teach it, but this one is specifically designed around those reading standards. And so keep in mind, it's not testing, we're not showing the data for our honors courses, and I'm not showing you the data for English skills because that has a completely different test. So of the students that are remaining, we have 707 students. Now that may not be all of the students, because if we don't have a pre-test and a midpoint result, then I can't show you the data. There's nothing to compare. So these are only the students that have the 2 data points. And as a district right now, we have 35% of our students received 1 more question correct on their midpoint. And then you can see it broken down by building. 38% at Bremen, 28% at Tinley, 40% at Hillcrest, and 34% at Oak Forest. So if we were to double that figure, we're on a good path to have more students get 1 more question correct. Give you a second to kind of.
It's just interesting that Hillcrest and Bremen have the higher percentages. Does that say something about where they start, or just?
Well, Hillcrest gets the actual Title I stuff with, right?
They do, but we're really trying to put an emphasis specifically at those 2 buildings, as they are our priority schools, and making sure that we're doing more remediation, doing more intense focus at those 2 buildings. They also have, outside of Oak Forest, more of the students, so you're going to see potentially more growth out of those. Yes, it could also take into consideration, did they start lower, and so they do have more room to grow than the other schools. So it's a lot of factors. Mm-hmm.
But then at least they put in some good effort between the beginning and now.
Absolutely.
No work.
And I know, especially at Hillcrest, with the IPI team doing their walkthroughs and looking at student engagement, and the administrative team is doing walkthroughs to look for teachers and students actively engaged in reading standards 1, 7, and 8. So there's a heightened awareness, especially at Hillcrest, with a focus on these 3 standards, which I think obviously will contribute to growth in those areas. So that's kind of where we are with the reading, what we're doing with the Type 2 assessments. Again, these are linked to teachers' evaluation. That's part of their growth model, and so that's why we have that 1 more question correct, which is something we're going to reevaluate at the end. Actually, in the spring of this year, the para is up for renegotiation to make some changes to the student growth model based upon our data at this point. So that's something we're going to look at. We're going to look at the assessments, looking at the timing of giving the tests, perhaps changing that. We know some of our freshman students end up taking 6 assessments, so can we pare those down a little bit? So all those things we're having conversations about. But understanding what we're doing with our Type 2 assessments and then segueing into our PSAT, you're going to see how, while it may have seemed random and crazy 2 years ago, like why are we focusing on this, it's all been purposeful to lead us up to PSAT and SAT, because you're going to see the correlation between those 2 assessments. So I first want to talk a little bit about SAT, because I don't know how much you know about the SAT. Yeah, and same thing with our staff. We're trying to educate. It's a big learning curve this first year, not only with our staff, but also our students and our parents, because it is so very different than the ACT. So first and foremost, the scoring is very different. So ACT was on a scale of 1 to 36. This is on a scale of 400 to 1600. So right there alone, I don't even know what these big numbers mean. That score is made up of 2 sections. So they're going to get a score for math, and they're going to get a score for this thing called evidence-based reading and writing. Now this visual is a little bit misleading because it looks like more of the score comes from the reading and more of it comes from the math, but that's not actually true. No. Both sections are on a scale of 200 to 800. So we add up, let's assume students get a perfect score. It's 800 for reading, 800 for math. That gives me a 1600 overall. So it's not 60% comes from reading and 40% comes from math. In essence, they're about 50-50. Okay. So if you can kind of see, there's a line that disaggregates these 2 sections, and there is some slight overlap between the 2. In ACT, we actually had a test for reading. We had a test in English, we had a test in math, and we had a test in science. So no longer do we have those forced subject tests, we have only 2. But across those 2 tests, you're going to see science. There's actually science questions in math, as well as in reading and writing. And you're going to see some history and social studies trickling into math, as well as reading and writing. So those 2 core subjects will actually be found in both subject tests, which is something a little bit different. Traditionally, math in ACT is just math. Not anymore. You're even going to see career and technical education type problems in a math section. Very Park-like. So now let's talk about on this evidence-based reading and writing. SAT kind of shortened it and they called it ERW, evidence-based reading and writing. So I'm going to refer to it as ERW. That's made up of 2 subtests. So there's a test in reading, which is where I'm going to focus the majority of my data on. And then writing and language is another piece. So these 2 scores get added together to come up with the 400 to 18 for the ERW. Okay. Within the reading and also the writing, they're focusing on 2 areas. And this is very different than the old ACT. One thing they focus on is words in context. The students will be asked questions like, the author uses the word funny to describe X. And so they have to go into the passage, find the word funny, and they'll give the line a reference. And they have to figure out how is the author using that word and then choosing the best answer that goes with it. Some of the questions may ask the student to actually define a word using context clues. Okay. Command of evidence is where I'm going to focus our attention on the data today. Command of evidence is where you're going to see reading standards 1, 7, and 8. They also test standard 6 a lot, which is author's purpose and point of view. Okay, so the English curriculum is going to cover standard 6, but I'm going to show you how parallel what we're doing with our worthy target with the PSAT and the command of English. They also test standard English convention, which statement is grammatically correct. If the author wanted to insert this line of text, where would it most appropriately fit, things of that nature. And then the expression of ideas, again, is looking at author's point of view and use of language. In math, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Actually, I'm not going to show you any data on the math. We have a lot of work to do in this particular area because, I'm going to show you the test. The math is completely different than how students have been assessed in ACT. It's very park-like, so there's multi-step problems. It's more, there's actually one kind of curveball the kids had this year. There's a portion of the test that they can't use a calculator. So there's a non-calculator part and a calculator part.
ACT they did a lot.
It's all calculated, exactly. So that's something that we have to help our students.
But that's a good thing for the kids to actually learn.
Absolutely.
Because there's fields out there that require you to take a test without a calculator,
Yes.
and kids don't know how to do it.
Yes. And a lot of it is not solving the answer, it's how would you set it up. Is really what that critical thinking, that problem-solving skill is what they're assessing in the non-calculator part. And they're looking at 3 different areas: the heart of algebra, problem-solving and data analysis, and then passport to advanced maths is where you're going to find a lot of algebra 2 and trig. Most of your pre-algebra, algebra, geometry is going to be in these 2 subsections. So we'll talk about math a little bit later. I don't want to focus on that this evening. I want to focus on the reading part because that's what's aligned to our worthy target. So if you remember when we operated under EPAS, so we had Explore, we had Plan, and we had ACT. They called that the EPAS system. SAT, College Board has the same thing. They call it the SAT suite of assessments. It's made up, so there's 3 different levels. PSAT 8-9 we gave to freshmen in October. I'm not sure if we're eventually going to move towards PSAT 8 as a placement test. We haven't had that discussion yet, but that is an option.
What are they given now as the placement?
Right now we're using the MAP for a couple of reasons. One, we own the product. We test all of our special ed students, and the 3 of our major feeder schools MAP test the students already. So we just take the data and they share it with us. So it's a nice kind of partnership there. The PSAT is on a scale of 120 to 720 per section. So 1440 would be the highest score a student would get as a freshman. The PSAT, and there's a huge alphabet soup with this suite, so I apologize. PSAT, NMSQT is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test.
Ooh.
We currently, in the past, we always gave this to juniors, select juniors, because this is what qualifies them for a National Merit Scholar, and they have to take this test as a junior. This year, all of our juniors took that test. In addition, all of our sophomores took that test, the same exact one. Now, that won't qualify them as a National Merit Scholar. They have to take it again as a junior. But there is no PSAT 10 for the fall.
Right.
This
so
is the only one that they give.
scholarship.
Okay. In the spring, we're looking to give the sophomores the PSAT 10. And then in the junior year, they take the SAT. So the NMSQT is out of 1520. The SAT is out of 1600. So this system works basically the same as EPAS does. That if I was a freshman and I took the PSAT, and let's say I scored an 800, let's say I scored an 800 overall, I would get the same score if I were to sit and take the ACT that same day. It's testing the same skill. So regardless of what test you took, it's assessing your ability at that point in time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But I'll talk about how it actually has a built-in growth model that we can actually do some longitudinal tracking and understanding students' skill sets. So in essence, they're testing the same skills, they're set up in the same fashion. And we can do some prediction just like we did with SAT. So this is basically just talking about how the sections are vertically aligned. So when we're talking about standard 1 in PSAT 8-9, it's the same standard in SAT, same skill set. We can do the same thing even in our cross test scores, looking at the command of English, looking at the analysis in science and social studies, we're talking about the same skill sets, in essence, is what that slide means. Okay. So again, I'm going to talk specifically about the evidence-based reading and writing. To give you an idea of how the test is structured, there's 5 passages. Each passage is about 500 to 750 words per passage. There's about 10 to 11 questions per passage. On the SAT, there's 52 questions. On the freshman test, there was 42, and the junior test was 47. And the passages all come from these areas. It'll be U.S. and world literature, history and social studies, and science. And 1 to 2 passages will have a data table or chart associated with it. So they have to use that data table in addition to understanding the information and synthesize it together. Okay, and that's the same regardless of which test they're taking. Here's where we can start doing some predictions and start charting growth like we did with the EPASS system. If you remember, between Explore and Plan, we were looking for 2 points of growth. Mm-hmm. Here, what we're looking for is between the freshman test and the sophomore test, we want 20 points. Okay. Between the sophomore test and the junior fall test, we should get 30 points. And from the junior fall to the junior spring, we're looking for 20 points. Okay, so this is one section. This is just the reading, the ERW.
Do the middle one again? The timing?
If we are going from sophomore to junior fall, we're looking for 30 points. And then from...
It seems like a shorter time frame and they're looking for more growth. Am I reading that wrong?
Actually, this is the shortest time frame because you're going from fall to spring in the same school year.
Oh, okay.
This is one full school year, October to October.
Okay.
So in essence, if a freshman scored 410 on the English or the evidence-based reading and writing, we can predict if we had 70 points, they would get a 480. If we're teaching the standards, if they're in the core curriculum and progressing and hitting these benchmarks along the way, we can predict that that student would get a 480.
And the 9th grade test, is that the entrance test, the 8th grade, or no?
No, we're not using it right now as the
So it is given in the 9th grade?
It is.
What about the juniors this year? You really can't measure because they've been taking different types of tests, 8th grade, freshman, sophomore year.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to show you their results and kind of talk about what we're going to do with those students and give you an idea of where they were in the process. This is actually the benchmark that SAT, so remember in ACT there are certain benchmarks for college and career readiness. This is the college and career readiness for ACT. For a student to have a 75% chance of getting a B or better in their freshman English course. So that's going to be our target, is 480. Math is actually higher. The SAT benchmark in math is 530. Oh. So in essence, if we were to add up, let's talk about the juniors. If we were to add up 530 and 480, our overall score would be a 1010. Well, what does that mean? There's actually scales, and we'll walk the student. I didn't put it just in your packet, but I can share it with you. Teaching the students to compare ACT to SAT, a 1010 on an SAT is a 19 on an ACT. So it is, in essence, the state benchmark of what we were shooting for in terms of ACT. That's what I was always told. I took the SAT in New York because a lot of the East Coast schools and the West Coast schools doesn't do the SATs. And I remember my counselor always telling me, if you can break 1,000, you can get into a lot of good schools. So that's kind of our target. If we can get the kids 1010 or better, it opens up a lot of doors. Okay. Now that, remember, that can come from the combination of the 2 scores. So I may not be really good in math, but if I have a really good English score, I can still be well above the 1010.
And how much more time do you think is there more time needed for this SAT? Seems like there's a lot more writing and bigger reading in this. It's
a great question. Right? There's actually less questions and more time for students to answer questions than on the ACT.
Okay.
And I can show that. I didn't print that out for you, but I can share that comparison. The training that we went through that I shared in mid-month, I think in November, this whole packet is from our training, and it actually had the side-by-side comparison of ACT to SAT.
And that's interesting in itself because it's a less stressful situation.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Students have more time to
still
read,
a test.
Analyze. It is.
There's X amount of stress.
I think most kids going through the ACT with hearing over and over and over how you're not going to make it through.
Right. tackle the easy ones. I remember we used to teach the kids in science, do your data charts and graphs first, then do your research summaries, and then do your conflicting viewpoints. And within those, we gave them test strategies about how to navigate. Here, and actually when we were going through the training, a lot of the teachers were talking about how we have to unlearn and unteach those strategies because they will not work for the SAT. It's a completely different approach to this test. But the fact that the students have more time to read, analyze, and go back in the SAT is going to be beneficial.
And then what about kids that, we give it at school and then they want to take it again to try to up their score? Is it pricing-wise the same as the ACT? Do you know?
That's a great question.
And can they take it as many times, just like the ACT?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They can take it on a national testing day. I don't know offhand. I'd have to look up because we get a price discount because we're doing it as a district. I know the PSAT was $10 a student. The 10th grade one, NMSQT, I think is $15 a student, and I believe the SAT is like $35. With the writings a little bit more. ACT was $55, $65 per student. So it's definitely a lot cheaper.
And the colleges then are going to begin, except the Midwest colleges are going to take?
All colleges accept. It's just it hasn't been a practice in the Midwest.
And so kids could still go and take the ACT too if they find that that's their comfort level, like seniors, if they were in the fall wanting to submit that to a college, if that's where their comfort level is.
And we've been actually counseling our juniors this year to do both. They absolutely have to take the SAT. It's not an option because that's the state test. But we're also encouraging them to take the ACT on
a national testing day somewhere.
Again, because like you said, that's their comfort area right now until this becomes the new norm.
And we have had kids too that have taken the SAT depending on what they want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, depending where they want to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they don't have a choice depending on where they want to go.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay, so this is our mean evidence-based reading and writing scores for the 8-9. Remember the benchmark is 410 to say that students are on track to hit the SAT benchmark of 480. So as a district, we're already meeting. Our average is meeting that benchmark. Bremen is only 8 points below the average. Tinley Park is meeting. Hillcrest is 33 points below. I just talked about what does that translate to? And then Oak Forest's average is already meeting that benchmark. So if we look at the scale, let's assume that the students do the exact same on the writing. So I'm just going to talk about the reading portion. Remember, there's two. There's the reading score and then the writing in language score. Let's say that the student did exactly the same in the writing, but they got 2 more questions correct in the reading, their score would go up by 10 points. So if you think about it from this perspective, kids at Bremen only need to get 2 more questions correct to hit, actually less than that, to hit the target of 410. And Hillcrest, we just need 6 more questions correct, assuming everything else was the same, to meet the benchmark of 410.
Just wonder what the day was, where their heads were into.
Well, also keep in mind when we're looking at all of this data right now, our kids have never taken a PSAT, ever. And I'm really pleasantly surprised and pleased with the data that I'm going to show with you today. And again, the fact that we are doing a lot of things, and when you see the questions, we're asking. We need to make sure that we're asking these questions all across the board. But we have a good foundation to really help our students improve in the reading side of it. Okay. The next couple of slides are going to show you the percentage of students that are hitting that benchmark. So this is the 8-9. We have 42% of the students at Bremen hit the 410, 64% at Tinley, 28% at Hillcrest, and 63% at Oak Forest. Again, first time these kids have ever taken that test. Our yellow bubble, so these are the kids that are just about right there hitting the target, and then we want to focus on the students that we need to strengthen. Again, they could be missing the benchmark by only 4, 5, 6 questions. So that's where we can really start getting into some data analysis, which is the nice thing about the SAT suite of assessments. The data that we're getting back is on a question level. In the past, with ACT, we only got a percentage. These are the students that are scoring in the 13 to 15 range, and they can do this, but they may not be able to do that, but you couldn't really pinpoint exactly what the kids could and couldn't do. we're going to be able to do that a little bit deeper with the SAT suite. So we can really target individual students. This is our mean score. Now this is the 10th grade NMSQT. The benchmark for those students is a 430. And again, we have a little bit of work to do. First time that these kids have taken the test, but we're not that far off the mark. Percentages of students hitting that 430 right now. 37% at Bremen, 57% at Tinley, 28% at Hillcrest, 54% at Oak Forest. Okay. And then our mean scores, this is the 11th grade at 460. What's interesting to note about this class of juniors never had the new English curriculum that was standards-based. They've never had the Type 2 experience, and look at their mean scores.
Wow.
And again, we're only off 30-ish points. In 2 of our schools, we're talking 6 questions off from our average. And these are the percentage of students that have hit the 460, which is their benchmark in the fall. 35% at Bremen, 57 at Tinley, 32 at Hillcrest, and 57 at Oak Forest.
Now, is there still like the Work Keys program then? So what are the kids do in place of that?
Yeah, so what we're doing is now that we have this data, and we actually will be, right now we have it in paper form for each student. Each student actually received an electronic copy of their item analysis for their results. At the bottom of it, there's an access code. So SAT, the College Board is actually paired with Khan Academy. They're a partnership if you're familiar with Khan Academy. The students can actually create an account in Khan Academy. They'll put in that access code. It'll import their scores into Khan Academy, and it'll actually produce a prescriptive program designed around their deficient areas. Okay, so what we're doing...
Khan is spelled how?
K-H-A-N.
So, but they got these electronically, how? Like through their student email, or do parents know?
I believe College Board sent it directly. I think the students gave their email address, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And so they received it that way, electronically.
So
if not,
how do our parents know that the kids have this?
That's a good question. I have to find out from the APs what types of communication they've sent home, if any, at this point. Because these were just released this week to the students. So we're putting a game plan together as far as our test prep program for the spring. So what we're doing right now is our test prep teachers were a part of that November training. So they got the same packet of information. They looked at a practice test. We analyzed it. They got an overview of the whole SAT itself. They are taking a practice test now. Either they can do it over winter break or sometime before the test prep program comes online. That same practice test the students will take halfway through the prep program. So the teachers are getting an opportunity to take the practice test, which none of them have taken a full test before, so that they get the experience and they can be able to assist the students on that same test when they take the practice. In the meantime, we are crafting a schedule for students, which we're going to have to limit capacity because if we're doing Khan Academy, it's an online program. Juniors don't have iPads, so we're going to need computer labs. So we figure we're going to be able to get 60 to 90 students per building because we also have Delta running at that same time. But our intent is 2 days a week starting February 6th all the way up until just before spring break, because the SAT is right after we come back from break. It's that Wednesday. So students can come 2 days a week. We felt while Khan Academy is free and students can do that on their own, we also know kids won't do it on their own, so we're going to provide a structured atmosphere for them to come in. The teachers will spend probably the first night just going through, here's the essay, just like what I did, a little bit more in depth than just the overview that I gave you. Here's the test, here's the score, here's what makes it up, here's how much time you have, yada, yada, yada. They'll spend the first day kind of going through the nuts and bolts. They'll get the students set up on Khan Academy, make sure their scores got uploaded. The other thing we're going to have students download, there's an app called Daily Practice for the new SAT. Whether they have an iPad or a phone, what it will do is it will send to them every day a practice question in their deficient area.
This is an app?
This is an app. Daily app, or daily practice for the new SAT, I believe is what it's called. So we're going to get students set up with that. But really it's providing them an opportunity to come in, do their practice, have teachers on hand to assist them, and then use Khan Academy.
And Khan gives you, after the kids do some practice stuff, they do give the answers then, right?
They give the answers and an explanation of why the question is correct.
Okay.
That's even better.
Which is amazing.
I'm interested to, if there's any kids that do take both, their feelings about one versus the other.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, especially the first group going through, because again, they are so vastly different. You know, I see the pros and cons of both. If I wasn't necessarily good in science, I'd be scared to death of the ACT, potentially, unless I, understood how to answer those questions. Same thing if I'm not. I could see students being hesitant about the SAT because 50% is coming from math.
Well,
which can be scary if you don't understand what it's assessing.
It seems like it's less stressful because of the time and all this, but yet it's a lot more on you. Having to read and the way you're answering rather than just
especially on the math side.
The bubble. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now, okay, so you've looked at the test and you've seen the math, and given the math questions, what is your feeling? I know our math, we need some work, and so what's your feeling for the success rate of the kids that are just right there, that average level of math? Are they going to be successful on this in the math portion?
If we can't, and so one of the things, my supervisors are going to go through all this data in January when we come back and put together a plan of, okay, from now until April, what can we currently do for our juniors to kind of get them ready? One of and it may seem silly, but the test prep presenter talked about the fact that in the non-calculator portion, the students have to bubble in. It's not choosing A, B, C, or D. It's if they have to write a fraction, they have to write the number, then choose the slash in the bubble, then choose the next number. So it's simply filling out the bubbles correctly.
Wow. Yeah. Oh.
So that's one thing that is, although it's completely not math related, is teaching them how to fill out the answer key.
Right.
Another thing simple to do is, on this particular section of your math test, no calculator, just to get them into the habit of not using the calculator. Certainly, once we look at the item analysis, there are some skills that I think the math teachers could just kind of address. Again, are we going to solve everything in 3 months? No, but just some little simple things that could help increase the scores for now. But listening to the math teachers in the training, they talked about how they have to completely abandon what they've done in the past and they have to teach completely different, which our integrated math program is going to help with that shift.
So are they feeling completely just frustrated and overwhelmed now?
No, I think just the realization, we have to change.
Yeah.
And we have to get after it. So, and again, that's why we're encouraging our current juniors to do both, because if they feel more comfortable on the ACT, then do that. But, again, we can't not focus on SAT, because that's...
Right, because that is what you have to
Well,
give.
it'd be interesting if the kid did feel more, no, I like the ACT, that's what I've been working on, and then come back afterwards and say, oh, no, I really prefer the SAT.
Yeah.
Just
and
they have
curiously,
to take
why?
it at school.
Yeah. Is it more because they like the problem-solving aspect and
right.
not necessarily solving for the correct answer? So that's what we're doing with our juniors to kind of help them getting ready for the SAT. So, a couple of other things I want to share with you. So let's just focus on the PSAT 8-9. There were 42 questions for the students. College Board actually assigns a complexity level to each question. They either say this question is easy, this is medium, or this is hard. I don't know what they're using to come up with those descriptors, but I have a feeling it's based on the percentage of students that got that question correct. Then they would deem it as easy, medium, or hard. They do not, on the item analysis, they do not necessarily share which standard that they're addressing, but they'll say this is a command of evidence, this is a word in context, this is analysis in science. But what we're doing is going through and actually labeling it with a specific standard. Okay, so I went through the reading test for the 8-9 and identified there's actually 22 questions that address standards 1, 7, and 8. So 52% of that reading test covered standards 1, 7, and 8. Which again, if we go back to our worthy target and our focus on our type 2s on 1, 7, and 8, we're seeing an alignment between those two tests. So it's giving some validity to why we're doing these type 2s. The command of English mostly assesses 1, 6, and 8, so 6 is the purpose. They really do a lot of focusing on argumentation and evidence. 1 and 8 is very heavy throughout the reading, and there is some 7, like I mentioned. 1 to 2 passages will have data tables or charts in them. They also assess other writing standards, so it's not just 1, 6, and 8. There's a whole slew of standards that they assess in terms of writing. So based upon my analysis, there were 15 questions, so 36% of that test covered standard 1. 4 of them were easy, 8 were medium, and 3 were hard. 3 questions addressed standard 7. Now, 2 of the 3 actually assessed, one of them assessed standard 1 and 1 assessed standard 8. But the fact that it had a data table, I identified it as both standards. And then standard 8, there were 6 questions, 1 easy and 5 medium. Okay. So how does this help us? Let me share with you the actual test.
Is the SAT online?
It is. If you go into College Board, if you go onto collegeboard.org, I can show you. And I go under SAT. There are practice.
Okay.
And it scores the practice test?
It gives the students the scores were.
Right.
SAT practice test. So there are 6 of them, and I'm going to expand this to show you. So here's the test. Here's the answer sheet. So again, gives the students the practice, gives a sample essay. It gives the answer explanations for the students, and then how to score your test. So the great thing about using this is if I download my answer key and use it, that app that I was telling you about, the students can actually take a snapshot of their answer key. It'll upload to Khan Academy, and again, just add more data.
That already is so much ahead of ACT.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's free, isn't it?
Yes, it's free.
You can take as many practice tests as you wanted.
They don't. I mean, how do you know what's right?
Right.
What's the explanation behind it? That piece is
How do you
lacking.
fix what's wrong?
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
So is this the first year we're using Khan Academy in conjunction? Well,
Yes.
I know this is the first year we're using
SAT.
Because I've used Khan Academy. It's awesome.
Yes.
It's
Yep,
just like
this is
ahead of times. It'll help so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is the first time we're connecting our test results because this is the first time we're taking PSAT, SAT to Khan Academy. So this is where, if you're going to have your students practice, don't use practice test 3 because that's the one that we're going to use in our prep program. The teachers are taking that one right now. And the students will take that one halfway through their prep program after they do a few weeks of their prescriptive testing. So those are all free on the SAT website.
So is the teacher taking the test part of the
prep
for the instruction?
Yes.
piece of it?
Yep, exactly. Okay, so I shared with you, Debbie, if you don't mind sharing with Leslie, this is the actual PSAT 8-9 that the students took in October. So what we're doing now on our end is those 22 questions that we identified as standards 1, 7, and 8. This is an item analysis. Basically, this is what it looks like from the College Board site. So it's telling us what the correct answer is, what percentage of our students got the question correct compared to the state. And buildings would have this disaggregated by building compared to the district, compared to the state, and give us the percentage of students that chose each answer. So if we saw the greatest number of students chose the distractor, let's have a conversation about that. Why is this one the distractor, and why is it wrong? And then it identified the question as easy, medium, or hard. So let's take a look at question 8, because that's the first one that I flagged. So before you do that, what I did here for you is showed you again those 22 questions. which standard, 1, 7, and 8, is it addressing, the test level, here's how the state did, and here's how the district did. I flagged the question if we were more than 4% off from the state. No magic to it, it's just, well, here we were pretty close, here we were pretty close, but when we started getting a little bit more than 4%, I just kind of flagged it. So as supervisors in our conversations with each other and with our teachers, well, let's look at that question, why did our students perform below the state average? So go ahead and take a look at question 8. It is a hard question. It's on page 4. Now again, you haven't read the passage.
Right.
Without reading the article, my guess is the majority of our students chose D. And looking at where it falls in the passage, the two choices, the correct answer was C. The two choices are so close together in the text, and again, they're trying to identify which evidence, which one provides the best evidence. There was probably something in the in line 57 to 58 that was more of a distractor compared to line 56. But it's, if you take a look at question number 8, what does it depend upon?
What you picked for 7.
What you picked for 7, exactly.
So 7 was
So I was
wrong.
going to say,
It's going to be wrong.
You're going to tell us the answer to 7 so we
Exactly.
can get the answer to 8.
Sure, 7 is A.
Surprised by Goldman placements.
So that makes D the correct answer for 8. Okay.
So that's one thing that's completely new that we haven't necessarily tested before, are those question dependent type. Is, okay, what is the main idea of this passage? Great, you can do that. Give me your evidence to support it. And so that's one change that we can make, not only in our type 2 assessments, but the types of assessments that we're writing for students on a unit basis, is making sure that we have these codependent questions, because they are throughout the reading test. Let's take a look at...
And they have 55. This is the exact timing on here, 55 minutes?
Yes, to do 42 questions.
So that's about a minute and
And that includes reading the passage.
Yep.
Is there data do you see that what is the percentage that's not finished? Do kids not finish all 42 questions?
That is great, and I
lot?
don't know the percentage that didn't finish.
Because how does that factor into?
Sure,
where they're,
absolutely.
If they run out of time.
Absolutely. Let me just do a quick scan, because they actually give us the percentage that omitted. Let me just see as the test went on. Yeah, we did have some test fatigue. So starting around question, it's going to vary. We start getting into over 10% by question 35. We start seeing 12% of the students omitted 35, 36. 17% of the students omitted 42. So that was the last question on the reading
How
test.
many?
17% of the students didn't get to question 42. So yes, we did have a little, whether it's test fatigue or they ran out of time. Some of the things as you look at the test questions, we want to identify perhaps vocabulary that may be tripping up a student. For example, this morning when we went over it with CSI, one of the team members looked at the word infer. Well, if we're not using the word infer with our students, and that's used a lot in SAT, they're not going to know what that means when they're addressing that question. Sometimes SAT will ask you, what is the main idea of this passage? And sometimes they'll ask it in a way of, what's the author trying to present? Which in essence is asking, what's the main idea? But they're not saying main idea. So if we're only asking students, what's the main idea, and we don't ask them that question in different ways, they're not going to understand what the question is asking. So some of it is just semantics when it comes down to these things. So again, what we're doing with this item analysis is taking a look at, why are our students not at least performing at the state level? Is it something in the question? Is it the way that it's phrased? Is it the distractors? Even down to, we have the same item analysis by building. So are we seeing building differences on the question, which could tell you, again, is it a language issue? How are ELL students doing compared to our gen ed students? And again, to try to at least make sure that we're up to the state average. And for the most part, at least on this reading portion, we're pretty much right there with the state. Keeping in mind that not all schools tested PSAT. That's the other thing, is we're not all of the school districts are actually giving the suite of assessments. When you go back to those results for our 11th graders, that was something that we chose to do. But think about every other school district in the state of Illinois, they're only testing their best students because it's the National Merit Qualifying Test.
Oh, that's huge.
Exactly. So we're doing, again, I was pleasantly surprised by how our students performed for the first time out of the box. Do we have room? Absolutely. And I think we're going to show this to the teachers, the fact that they're assessing those 1, 7, and 8. We're already doing that. It's embedded in our curriculum. There's some tweaks that we can do to make sure that we're asking the questions in the same way that the students are going to see that, so they're not surprised.
Now, on those ones that we missed, do you have the data that show, are most of them picking one certain answer?
Yes. So I didn't print that for you, but here, you can take a look at a page from it. Even though these are all different questions, you'll see.
Yeah.
So
pretty interesting.
Here's choice A, B, C, D, and omit. This is A, B, C, D, omit. So that gives us even more information. If we're seeing the bulk of the kids, like I said, choosing D and the answer was C, okay, let's get after it. How come?
And in a lot of them, the bulk of them chose the right answer, but you get down to question 4, it's pretty close.
Yeah, and between science and social studies too, the differences.
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of different ways we can disaggregate this data.
Now, how Decision Ed can any of this
I was
help
just thinking
us
the same
with
thing.
plugging that in there and putting it all in one place?
Yes. So what we'll be able to do, and it's not in there just yet, is because we have to get the source file. Right now we just have it in a paper copy. But we'll be able to put it up and create the dashboards of, here's how the students did on their composite, here's the ERW, here's the math score, and then we can drill into and do some deeper dives. We're also uploading our Type 2 results so that we can do a comparison between how are the students performing in their Type 2 versus their PSAT scores versus their grade. So it's going to be able to do a lot of analysis for us.
Because that'll help too on an individual basis. If a parent has a major concern, the teacher should be able to bring up that student's dashboard, right? If I'm understanding how this works right. Well, this is a weakness, this is a strength. Maybe this is where you can focus. And maybe directing them, in test-wise anyway.
Yes.
And then where to direct them in time, because it could be, where do I even begin? How do I start? What should I focus my student on?
Absolutely. And the fact that the student has his or her own test results, that item analysis, it clearly identifies their weaknesses. Yeah.
How is Khan administered?
Well, it's done, what we're doing with our test prep students, because they don't have iPads, is we're opening up the labs for them to come in, and so we'll register them in Khan Academy. But if they have a phone, They can do it any web-based. It's a web-based. It's not a software.
Okay,
So they can access it.
Access to it or a certain.
No, they have to create an account.
Okay.
I've actually created one. Anybody can create a Khan Academy account.
Oh, I was just seeing how they were using it. Are they using it only, or are only certain students using it, or only?
Right now, we're going to launch it with the students that are going to be in the test prep program, but that's not to say that any student can't.
Okay.
We're going to purposely log them in one of the nights that they start, but we're going to make sure all the students are aware, because on the bottom of each student's item analysis is an access code for them to upload their scores to Khan Academy. So any student can do it on their own.
So is that something, that some verbiage that we're giving to the teachers, like, hey, we're launching Khan Academy and we want you to encourage students to use it?
Yeah, we're working on that. The APs for teaching and learning are putting together the whole test prep program and also information for the parents, letter going home saying this is what's available. If you can't do that,
parents have to know about this.
here's your other options. Yes.
Because they can even go to the library if they don't have the computer at home. You know, it's just any computer, doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because I know they used it. I know the middle schools used it. Some of the middle schools used it, and they had. I think they did better because of it, because it makes you think like the test.
Exactly, and that's half the battle.
It's not
is
teaching to the test; it's making you think.
Well, not only that, it's awareness of what the test is asking of you. That's half the battle. Is just being aware
Of any test.
Of anything.
What's the question? Be sure you know what the question is. Just ask what they're answering.
So feel free to flip through, take a look at the writing, take a look at the math. That's definitely interesting. And towards the back, it'll show you that bubbling that I was talking about.
I see that.
What was that, Ev? What page was it?
47.
Yeah, page 47.
Decimal points. Wow.
Yep, there it is. So even some of your best students, they may have gotten the answer correct on their booklet, but they didn't transpose it correctly on their answer key.
That is.
But some people think,
you have
well,
to actually. You're not choosing A, B, or C. Like
no,
you have to get.
You have to know the
and
answer.
Then you have to transcribe it correctly.
Exactly. So there's some discussion about, is that really fair? Well, precision and attention to detail is actually a Common Core standard in math. Yes, it's a skill. It takes practice.
Yeah,
you're not going to get.
But the timing thing
answer.
is going to, I could see a lot of kids being panicked, like, I don't have a lot of time. Let me put the answer.
But that's why there's less questions.
Yeah,
and more
but
time.
That's also where the strategies come in.
Yeah,
do what you know and
Don't
go back and play around with what you're not so
Corey,
sure.
did you say you're going to give us the list of the comparables to the ACT?
Yes, I can get that for you. Absolutely. So you can see the difference between the two.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
How has the I know on our memo it said something about are we launching, or it's already been launched, the decision aid?
It is launched to a small group of people right now because I want before it goes out to the masses, I want to make sure that things are populating correctly and accurately. So there's a small group of administrators and a small group of teachers that actually have access to the dashboard that are just starting to fiddle around and play with the reports. We've kind of, in essence, locked it down so they can only focus on a few things. Because if we were to open up everything, it's overwhelming. There's, over 600 reports that you'll just drown people, and then they're not going to use it because it's too overwhelming. Exactly. So, do you want to see it really quickly?
I've been waiting.
It's not glamorous.
Okay.
Let me.
I'm just glad we're going to be able to implement it and looking forward to the results.
I'm gonna find my links. I don't have it here. So what we've set up right now is what we're having people see are things that are tied to our multiple measures, and we want people to look at on a daily basis. Eventually, as they learn more about creating their workspace, we call these widgets, they'll be able to create widgets that are tied to something that could be personally of interest to them or a building-based goal. So these are mostly district goals that we want them to constantly look at. So we have a district summary page. First thing is we just have up here our current enrollment by building. Anytime that we see a blue underline, just like you would on a web page, what does that tell you?
Click on it.
You can click on it, it'll give you some more information. We want to pay attention to our year-to-date attendance. Right now it's flagged for if you are below 95%, it's going to start changing colors. Okay, and again, so we can see if we wanted to click on here, it'll actually show you students, and we can start drilling down into individual students that are missing school and try to get after.
How is the December attendance challenge going? Are you got any feedback on it yet?
I have not actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that's one of Tom's goals, that he's focusing on that. The other two things that we have on the district summary, these are our top 5. Now again, remember this is district data, top 5 infractions to date. So this is one of the things, this is why we didn't launch it right away, because we found something here. Well, how can students going to a counselor be an infraction? We realized that the same code that we're using to log a student visiting a counselor is this, we call it CC. It's the same code that we use for class cut. So this was something we realized where it's pulling from PowerSchool is not the right connection. Okay. So we want to fix this so it reflects class cut, not the fact that it's great that all these kids are visiting their counselor, but that's not really an infraction. So we want to make sure that's accurate. And then down here, we are tracking our top 5 responses to those infractions. So right now it's mostly daily detention, followed by silent lunch, all the way down to dean's detention. So that's just a quick snapshot. And again, this data changes every night if there's entries to cause a change in that data.
Wow.
What is silent lunch?
Silent lunch is basically instead of you going to the lunchroom to eat with your friend, you're going to a room and you're not allowed to talk, and lunch will be brought to you. That's a silent lunch, no friends. Our next tab is and let me kind of back up. So on each of our dashboards, we've set up filters so that we can filter by an individual school, we can filter by a grade level. So let me just show you a grade level. Oh, actually, why is that? Instantly, the data changes.
Wow. What grade did you pick?
I picked 9.
Okay.
So then we can see of our 9th graders, what's the biggest issue going on with them. We can also filter by, it's hard to see because of I pulled the screen down because of the glare. We have flagged, well, how are our low income students in the 9th grade? And it's going to automatically repopulate the data for, again, based on that filter, these are our 9th grade students who are low income. Here's their attendance to date and their top 5 infractions and top 5 responses. Notice how quickly I was able to do that? To do that in PowerSchool would take a long time because I'd have to pull. Not as bad as some of the other reports because they're a little bit quicker, but the more in-depth you're asking a question, the longer it would take for us to pull it in PowerSchool. And here
but this is all based on PowerSchool being updated regularly as well.
Yes. And so that's where we have to be very careful, that kind of saying garbage in, garbage out. If we're not cautious about what we're putting into PowerSchool and we're not putting it in the same place across the district, it's not going to come out in the same way or it's not going to be accurate. And so that's why it's taken us a while to launch it, is because every single piece of data had to be validated in Decision Ed to make sure that it's pulling correctly. Just like that CC, we didn't find that until we actually launched the dashboard. That's not right, so we have to go back in and figure out where that connection is not linked correctly. But all of that has to be validated. The next tab we have set up is Enrollment. Make sure all my filters are off, yes. So each tab also has its own set of filters. So that now this is a lot of information on this page, but basically, if we were curious, well, how many females to males in our district. Interesting that we're about 50-50.
Yeah.
Someone had brought that up the other day. Here are, now, if you are looking at the bar graph, you have to know what 11, 12, all the way through 17 means, but it's actually disaggregated down here. 11 is the government code that we use to identify an Hispanic, 14 is black, 16 is white, 17, 2 or more races. We also identified low income, non-low income, because again, it gives us a quick snapshot of how many kids are in these different demographics. And because it is hyperlinked, if I wanted to know who this one student is, I can click on it. And it'll give me that information about that student. I'm not going to do that here for privacy purposes. We have another tab specific to attendance. This is where it starts getting really interesting, I think. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that. We've never looked at attendance by days of the week.
That's a great idea.
And how about Mondays?
Mondays and Fridays.
Like
Yep.
the
I mean,
and a midweek break.
Shocking, but we've never actually presented it in that fashion. And again, if you start filtering, you may start producing some patterns that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Mm-hmm. We have our category count. So this is where the color coding comes in. Decision Ed sets up 95% as being excellent attendance, and then good, 90 to 95, all the way down to danger and alert. So on that summary page, while we showed you the average attendance to date, that doesn't really fluctuate significantly, and I don't know that that's something we would necessarily be concerned about. I'd like the widget to change to what percentage of the kids are not at 95%. Who are they? Would give us a better picture. And then we can start drilling down into that. And then we have our category counts by grade level. What's interesting, and again, I can't share with you a specific case, but if I just kind of fooled around the other day and I clicked on one of the bars, I looked at a student who had a significant number of absences. I think it was 20 days. And when I clicked on his name, it actually brought up a pie chart that showed me what day of the week the student took off mostly. And then it also showed me the percentage of students that had the same days off.
Oh.
So you could actually...
A little group thing going on.
Possibly. I mean,
Maybe.
Again, you can drill it down to which student has 100% of the exact same days off, and it would give you a list if there were. In this particular case, there weren't any. But again, it just starts to have... questions and conversations.
Is that my ride? And if my ride's not going, I'm not going either then.
Possibly. And is anybody aware that there's a connection between...
Yeah. Everybody don't feel good. I don't feel good today.
Joe's
either.
mother works on Monday, Pete's mother works
Yep.
on Wednesday.
Now, again, our chronic absentee students, the buildings are aware and they are aware of some patterns, but sometimes they're not necessarily aware. This is our behavior tab, so we set this up mostly for our deans.
Big Brother in the Sky watching these kids living.
But now here's something I can see right off the bat. How can we have 2 infractions in April? We're not in April. So that's something interesting for this school year I'm going to have to take a look at.
Alan Thick.
He did.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Did you say he just died?
Yeah.
Oh.
Where are you getting updates from?
Sorry. So this is giving us a month-to-date total of our infractions, so we can look at, some trends over time. And again, some of this is not necessarily shocking that some months have higher infractions, usually around holidays, end of the semesters. But again, we can drill down to what actually were these infractions. Suspensions by month, number of students by month. Again, to pull this data the old way took a long time.
Now, does this give you the ability to... So this is a particular school.
This right now is the whole district.
Oh, it is the whole district.
Yep. We could drill down again, just like I showed you. There's the filters.
So you can, because like in the past, Tinley looked like it was, a juvenile prison by its numbers.
Yeah, and so just like every, like I showed you on that summary tab, every page has a filter.
Okay.
I can't. So here's Tinley.
So what's going on in August when they're only there for like a week and a half?
Great.
trying to get back into the swing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Possibly.
I guess.
With another, like before spring break, all hell breaks loose usually too.
That's good. The widgets on these dashboards are just meant to be quick. Hey, just give me a quick snapshot of in that moment. It causes you to then drill down to and ask those further questions, which is where the reports come into play or those hyperlinks come into play. Right now, this is just giving you a kind of a quick summary. I can drill into, okay, who exactly are these 6 students that have been suspended this month? Down here at the bottom, we have our infractions. So I can actually, this is a drop-down menu. I can pick an infraction and what responses were given to students. So let me back up and do it at a district level.
Now, does each individual person have a log-on to Decision Ed? Like, so what they can see is based on
it's all based on security levels, exactly.
To, like in their building,
yes,
and
based upon their role,
right.
In the
These
building.
have one set of things like the behavior and the attendance and.
Sort of. You know, your administrators pretty much have access to all information now, as it is. Teachers would only be able to, now, their dashboard would be set up exactly the same, but it would only populate for the students that they have. And so that's consistent across the district. Everybody has the same look, but the data is only for their security level. Okay. So let's just say, let's pick bullying. If my infraction is bullying, well, I can take a look at what have been my responses, so I can start looking at disproportionality, potentially, or just what types of responses are we giving our students. So it seems dean's detention is pretty popular, a little bit with loss of privilege. We have some out-of-school suspensions. We have some UPCs. Again, it's not telling you, this is just a snapshot. We don't know how severe the bullying incident was, what have you, but these are just some quick responses to that. This tab, the next one I'm going to show you is ACT, but we're going to migrate over to SAT, but this is kind of round out, our conversation from today. So this is giving us, again, a quick snapshot. These are our composites, reading, math, and science scores, and giving us our grade distribution. Again, this is for the whole district. I have my filter set up, so I can filter by school, I can filter by ethnicity, I can filter by special ed, limited English proficient, and it's going to repopulate that data instantly. Now, this is not comparing anything else. This is, again, just an overall snapshot. There's a report there's actually a lot of reports related to ACT where we can compare ACT to, actually, let me share one, which is going to be great when we have the full SAT suite for a student. It's going to show you Corey's PSAT 8-9 to the 10, to the NMSQT, to the SAT, and the growth over time, which is going to be huge for us.
Perfect.
So if a parent wanted to meet with a teacher or counselor and see, where their student's at, there will be an individual dashboard for that for each student.
Yeah, the counselor would just pull up that student. The great thing, and again, I wish I had a sample. I wish there was a sample student. I'm going to see if I can work on that to show you, what that would look like. But any one of those hyperlinks, if I were to pull up a student and I click on the student's ID, whatever information I have about that student, it's going to be in one place. It's going to give me their attendance to date. It's going to give me any discipline issues. It's going to give me their historical grades, their grades in progress, testing information.
Cause and effect.
Yeah, anything you want to know about that student, where the student came from, if they transferred in, transferred out, all of that in one spot, which is huge. So when a parent comes in to have a meeting with the counselor, no longer do I have to click all over the place. I've got one data set. The last thing, the last tab that's set up, this is the reporting side of it. So again, there's 600 plus reports that are in here. And this is going to take us some time to filter. We can actually lock down and say, only show these reports. These are the only ones I want them to work with, just so they get comfortable with the data, things that we would normally do all the time. And then some of my advanced users would have more access to the reports. But I would be able to filter between, is it a district report, a student report? The next phase is we're going to get iVisions loaded, so we'll be able to do financial reporting in here. I can also, come on, where did I drop down? I think I just selected one. I can sort by, give me school assessment data or give me school attendance data. So let me just select assessment since that's been our topic of discussion today. I can look at my 3-year cohort summary by course if I wanted to. Marks compared to assessments. So marks are students' grades. How are students' grades compared to assessments that are in the system? Growth. I can look at multi-year assessments for a given course. At the district level, you'll get into MAP. You'll get into AP data. So our AP data was just validated. That's already sitting in Decision Ed. So we can start comparing student success on an AP test versus their grades in the class. And can we predict how successful a student will be based upon their MAP scores? Actually, my social studies supervisor just did that. He took last year's AP scores, compared them back to the MAP score, and was able to lower the MAP entrance score because from a 228 to a 225, because students who had a 225, I believe it had a 50% chance of getting a 3 or better. So we opened up the window for students to take AP Geography by doing that data analysis, which is really cool. So that's kind of where we are.
But not every teacher in each of the buildings is using this yet.
Not yet. We started with a select group. We actually started with Bremen's data team because they already had a group of teachers. That's something that they're doing. They're interested in data. They want to look at it, so they've had an opportunity to see their dashboard. We have decided for the rollout to just focus on administrators because we had overwhelmed teachers so much with EvaluWise and the student growth model. We thought, let's phase it in. Let's have some pockets of teachers, counselors. We've rolled it out to our career counselors. So one of the things we're asking them to do is think about the new state report card and that college and career readiness indicators is how can we flag students with those college and career readiness indicators so that they can create a dashboard that has widgets of here are the percentage of my kids hitting dual credit and here's the percentage of kids with a 2.8 GPA or lack thereof, and that's the group that I want to target. So we're going to roll it out to the administrators, all of them. I would say we had maybe 12 in November. All of them will get exposure in January with our next data retreat. And then we'll continue phasing in the teachers over time. Because you can see how overwhelming it is.
Yeah, but it's a nice tool though too. So what if there's teachers particularly that just I'm ready for it or I want
Absolutely.
it, they can just go ahead and log on and start using it.
Yeah, all they need is the link to it. It uses the same login as their computer. Yeah. Other questions? I need these tests back.
How aware are the teachers of the tool that we have here? It's just not.
I mean, as Bill has gone around and had meetings with the buildings, he's mentioned it to people. So
take it.
Yeah, you can't.
Take it online.
We'll take a practice test.
Right.
Let us know how you do.
Yeah.
As a ninth grader.
So teachers, not so much. Admins, even on the admins, they've heard it, but they heard it a year ago.
Okay.
And so we're intentionally creating a buzz about it so that they're excited when we actually get in there to use it. Rather than saying you have to use this, because again, I wouldn't introduce 600 reports to even administrators.
Remember when we rolled out Power School? It was
We're done, right?
Yes.
I'll call you tomorrow. I'm meeting somebody at 8. So
Okay. Anybody have anything else for the cause? Okay. 7:58. Is that what time you have?
58.
All right.